Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with a special guest again, Josh Wallace, a 3D character artist friend of mine. My name is Pedro Colaço, and I'm glad to make this interview to a dear friend of mine. Hi, Josh. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Pedro. Nice to be here. My name is Josh Wallace. I'm a character artist from Namibia, which is in Africa. I've been doing 3D for about 5 years, but I've been specializing in characters for the last 3 years.
All right, that's a good introduction. Thank you very much. And straight to the next question. It's how did you start? What inspired you to do this kind of stuff, art-wise?
So, I've always loved art, and I actually come from a quite an artistic and musical family. But unlike them, I was never able to draw or paint. So when I discovered that 3D was a thing, I quickly jumped onto the outlet and started experimenting with modeling and sculpting and even game development when I first started out.
You just said to me early on that you don't believe in talent in that sense, like you couldn't draw. So do you believe that then in that sense it's that you that don't like it, or it's something that is not on you? How can you explain that? It's a bit contradictory.
Yeah, so for instance, I don't believe in the word talent as it's seen by many people. A lot of people think that if you're good at something, you're talented, you're born with it, like it's a gift. Sometimes, yeah, it could be. But I see it more as skill and interest and passion. So, for instance, when I was younger, I've always wanted to draw. I tried many times, but it didn't stick with me. Mm-hmm. And I was never able to really push it. So I would say that the passion wasn't there, even though I really wanted to do it. So with talent as well, you know, it's you have to have full-blown passion for it. And you have to put in the work, and that's what I think on talent. And
what about? It's interesting that you said that, like, because we talked about this like as friends usually, like about this kind of subject. But it's interesting that you talk about music because and you were going to explore this a bit further about what you do and etc. But did music influence you, like, because your family is dedicated to that, and did any in some instance influenced you?
Yes, definitely. I played piano for a bit when I was younger. I never really took it very far, and I still like to play some piano from time to time, but I'm not that good at it. But before I started 3D, I actually got into some music production and sound design for a while. Also, like, I really liked it, but I wasn't that passionate about it. So it was more of like a hobby, and I never really took it as serious. So it was just something fun to do. I still like to dabble from time to time, and I've gotten more into the mixing and mastering and sound engineering type of area from time to time, but other than that, I think that's pretty much as far as I took music.
So as I understand, it was a bit better than drawing, like you had a bit more you were a bit more committed to it, but it wasn't enough to get you stuck to that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's a lot more than drawing for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm still into it, but yeah, not enough. I wouldn't say I committed enough to make something worthwhile out of it, like I have done with 3D and art now.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of art, like what you do now as an artist, character artist, amazing things that we see from you that you developed, and I think people should know more about your work because you have exceptional technical skills, not only in character art but in other fields as well, like graphic design and other fields that you will tell us later. But what was your influences to and on the path to this craft?
Thanks, man. Yeah, as far as influences go, like I said, I've really loved art, and be coming from an artistic family, I've always wanted to be artistic, but also in that sense, I've never been creative enough. So discovering this 3D art, and it being so technical, I kind of started clinging to that and experimenting with that, because I don't have to be as creative. I could just be more technical, and so that played a very big part. But as of for artistic sense, I remember when I first saw the World of Warcraft cinematics, specifically the Lich King when it first released. And back then I really liked World of Warcraft, and I got into it a little bit. And when I saw the cinematics, just the sheer quality and fidelity of it, I was blown away. And every other cinematic trailer of most games back then, it was, the quality was very different in the actual gameplay, so it obviously stands out. And I've always just been amazed at it, and it's sort of what's been driving me over the years to keep going on art and try to achieve that quality one day. So yeah.
Okay, well, then you start doing 3D by yourself, or did it go? How did you start on 3D?
Yeah, so at the time, I was doing a lot of musical stuff, and to that, a friend of mine actually got me CDs with software, and I remember there was this one. It was like a gaming and PC magazine called PC Format. I don't know if they have it overseas, but in my country they had it, and you always get this disc with the magazine with a bunch of different software. And it had Blender on it. I know, there's a lot of controversy regarding Blender, but yeah, that's how I started. I just started messing around, and at the time, at the place where I was living, there was no internet, so I didn't have any access to tutorials or any online presence. So both myself and my friend, we just experimented, clicked buttons, and I guess that's sort of where I started learning my technical side, because there were no resources to search for tutorials. So we just kind of figured it out, and that's sort of how it started.
That actually leads us to the next question I want to make, which is kind of interesting. I know some of the stories related to your difficulties of resources and not only software resources, but physical resources, the place where you live. But can you tell us a bit more about these funny stories growing up in Namibia, trying to find friends, trying to overcome obstacles that people wouldn't even know? Like that time that an hyena almost ate your leg, and while you were doing... no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. I'm just joking. But can you tell us a bit more of these funny stories, please?
Yeah, well, maybe it did happen. No, I'm just kidding. Well, yeah, living in Africa, a third world country and a third world continent as well, has its challenges. But I actually grew up in South Africa, and then I moved to Namibia about 7 years ago, which is right next to South Africa. But, both of these places have their limitations. One mainly being that the internet really sucks. And, whenever there are storms or wind or anything, the signal just drops. And a lot of the times that can really be a big roadblock, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And it definitely impacts being able to search for resources, tutorials, courses, and even sometimes, even recently, while doing courses, when the internet just disappears, it becomes really challenging to continue. But yeah, you get through it eventually. Another big thing is, because I wouldn't say 3D is very well known here. It's still kind of niche here. There aren't a lot of artists, and the ones that are there, their skills aren't as refined. because they don't really have exposure to the international market. They just stick to the the cliche market of what we have here in the country, and they just build on the skills there. It is nice to know other artists, but yeah, it's a bit difficult when they don't really want to improve their art skills to an international level. But yeah, I think that those are some of the main struggles that we have here. Oh, and then another thing, as I'm pretty sure everybody that's living in a third world country would know, is power cuts when there's no electricity. That's also a big hurdle when working in this type of field, and you don't always know when it's gonna happen. So just gotta be careful. Yeah. Oh no!
No, I'm sorry. We can feel your pain, your sorrowed soul, and I want you to know that we are here for you. Okay, so don't feel sad.
Thank you, man.
Now, in a more serious tone, we know that we can understand that you had some obstacles on your way, but we talked about this, and actually we know that it's not only bad things that came out of this, because it was challenges that actually made you better as an artist, because you build up your character and with peculiar problems that nobody else would have, and this actually crafted you for a more interesting person and artist as well. So can you tell us a bit more of how did these problems affect you positively in your artistic path?
Thank you, man. Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot from all of the struggles. One main thing is look carefully after your equipment and just make sure everything is good, and try and save your projects as much as possible. Have backup hard drives in case something breaks. Just be smart about your equipment and also your art. Another thing it's taught me is patience, because with slow internet it becomes very difficult, and you really have to learn patience. And just never give up. Just keep going. It'll get better eventually. And it's also one main thing, especially when I started out, and I'm actually really glad it happened, is it's unlocked my technical side. It's taught me to problem solve and figure it out on your own. Press random buttons until you get it to work. So that's a big thing that I'm really grateful for, is that technical side that's sort of been unlocked.
What was the context of 3D, of the time that you started 3D, and what's the reality in your country for the 3D industry?
So, like I mentioned earlier in a previous question, it's 3D is still very cliche here. There is a market for it, but it's not as big as it is overseas, like for say in the UK or in America or most of Europe. I would say the only real market for it here would be product design and commercials. And most of the artists that are working here, they're just doing commercials, beer commercials, car commercials, and just modeling the assets and maybe doing some motion graphics. But that's pretty much it. Though in South Africa there are a few indie game studios, but nothing really big. For any artist here, the only real option is to find international work or relocate.
We know each other for a bit now. We met in a certain online bootcamp for 3D characters that I'm not going to mention the name. And since then, well, I noticed your skills straight away. You're a very good artist and a nice person. So it seems.
Thank you, man.
That's important, actually. If you're easy to deal with and you have a sense of humor, you're a kind person. I really enjoy your company. And But since that experience on that course that we did, we are not on the same not on the same class, but on the same course. You've been doing other courses, and you've been always developing yourself and slightly different fields. Could you enlighten us with a bit of your journey, and what is your opinion on this kind of studying system and your experiences?
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, as for courses, I haven't really done that many. And by courses, I mean like professional paid courses. I've watched many free online tutorials for sure. But as you know, when it comes to courses, I think I've only done 2 so far, and I'm about to start one tomorrow actually. I think overall it's been really positive. There were some hiccups here and there, especially to do with the internet, of course. But I think it's definitely a viable option instead of going to a physical university or college. And online training is really good. The only thing is you have to work your butt off. Because those assignments don't do themselves, and there's not really anyone to help you. And I think in that sense it can be more tough and more challenging, because you're not at a facility with people around you that encourage you. You're kind of alone at home, and you have to push through it. So that can definitely be a challenge, and I've definitely faced it quite a bit, especially with internet, being difficult. But yeah, I've really had positive experiences so far, and I definitely do recommend it. But yeah, I would say if you want to do a course, especially if it's an expensive one, because they can be quite expensive these days, do your research first. Make sure you really look into it and see if it works for you, because there's a lot of them, and it might not always be the right one for you, obviously, because as artists we're not all the same. Some of us have different needs. Some of us are more technical than others. Some of us are more artistic, and you need an instructor or a lecturer that's has a similar art style to you, or not art style, but similar way of thinking. That way you can learn the best from them. So definitely do your research before you just jump on a course. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on studying.
And your research, the research that you're mentioning, is not easy to get, right? Because there's no much information that you can get online, because there's not like a TripAdvisor for courses like this. There's not like a Google reviews for these courses. There's nothing like that, and it's like hit and miss, because it's not easy to talk to other artists. Because imagine, supposedly, if a course is really bad, I think artists won't go and say, "Oh no, this and this was very bad. I really don't like the attitude of this person. This and this." They won't go that, because they want to protect themselves as well. So it's not easy for you to get a course feedback from a course like straight away.
Yeah, definitely.
So in that sense, you go a bit blind. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That is a very big challenge that you'll have to face, because like you said, there is no TripAdvisor for courses, and people won't just openly say something negative, because they have to protect their reputation, because it is also a very small industry, so you have to be very careful what you say. But that being said, a good way to do your research is find out who the instructors are, find out, which companies have hired the students, find out the instructors and look at their portfolios. See if you can find some videos on YouTube, maybe of the instructors, working or talking. Try to see if their sort of work method gels with yours, and try to find students that have gone to the school and ask them, what was your experience like? Was it positive? Was it negative? What are the pros? What are the cons? And what they think, do they recommend it or not? I think that's the best way. It's just try to find students, like ex-students, and just hear their 2 cents. Like they won't say anything in public, in the open, if something bad happened, but privately they'll tell you, if it's worth it or not. So yeah, definitely reach out to students. So I think that's the best way to do research.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, that specific information that you give the audience now about what to look and how to look, I think it's very important for an artist to know. So thank you for that. So about your specific skills, about your specific interest in this field of 3D, the character art. What made you become interested in that, and how did you start with that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in the beginning, I was blown away by game cinematics from World of Warcraft, and then later that I saw the Star Wars, the Old Republic cinematics that blurred it, and I got really interested in that. But I didn't start in characters right away. I actually started in game development. I got Unreal Engine 4 when that came out, and I actually used UDK and Unity before that. Just dabbled with it, it was just a hobby. But when Unreal Engine 4 came out in 2014, and in 2014, early 2015, I started playing with that more heavily and investing more time. And it was really cool. I got into programming, into the blueprint system, and doing some world building. But I very quickly found out that, you kind of need assets, props and 3D models. And the ones you find online for free are really crappy. So, the only real way is to make them yourself. And at that time, I already knew Blender, and I had a bit of 3D experience. Wasn't that good, but I could make some things. So I got into props, very amateurish, and eventually, I was able to make a couple props and take some online ones and make them look better. And I got into texturing with Photoshop and Quixel, and eventually Substance came out, and that was really cool. But then again, I very quickly found out you need characters if you want to make a game. And again, you can't really find good characters, or at least at the time, you couldn't really find any characters for free. So I read around on the internet. At that time, at least I got internet, so I was able to Google, and I found this amazing program called ZBrush for sculpting, and apparently that's the software they use to make characters in pretty much all the games. So I got into that, and I started learning how to sculpt, and I think that's sort of how my character art journey started. And it was something that I really enjoyed and really gelled with, even though it was extremely and is still extremely challenging. Yeah, I just started, and I just never stopped, and here I am now.
You, as an artist, you tried games and films, cinematics, and you switched from one to the other, from games to cinematics. Was there any reason for you to do that? Is there specific things that you like on the cinematics workflow that you enjoy more than on the gaming?
Yeah, definitely. So I've always wanted to work in film ever since I saw the Blizzard and Star Wars cinematics. But like I mentioned, I started with game dev. That was sort of my journey, and at the time, all the feedback I got from people mentioned that if you want to work in the industry, you got to go games. It's very difficult to get into film, and it's just better to start in games. So that's why, at least for the first few years, I just focused on game dev and characters for games. And my first big course, which is the same one that Pedro did here, was on games. And I learned a lot, and I'm very glad that I have that knowledge now. But like I said, I've always wanted to work in film and actually in cinematics. And then recently, about I think a year and a half ago, I just decided, okay, I think I'm decent enough at art to make the switch. And I heard from some friends that are already working in the industry that depending where you are, it's not always true that games are the easiest route. Like if you live in the United States or big areas like that have really big influence in games, then yes, it's easier to get into games. But if you live in different areas, it's actually easier to get into film. But also, they say you should go for what you want to do and you shouldn't divert. So I thought at that time, okay, I have a decent knowledge in games. Let me just go full out into film. And I just started. I started learning as much as I could about the different workflows using Blender, using Arnold and Maya. And I did a course recently, not too long ago, that was specifically for cinematics, for characters for cinematics. Really, really good course. And I learned a lot. The workflow is similar, but also very different. But one thing I really love about the cinematics VFX workflow is the freedom that you have. You can go back and forth between, your high poly, your ZBrush sculpt to Maya, do renders, go back, fix it. Whereas in games, once you have the low poly in your bakes, you're kind of stuck. If you've done your textures and you're doing your renders, you see, oh damn, you have something wrong. You have to go back and pretty much redo everything. But yeah, film definitely gives you a lot of flexibility. It does have its challenges, definitely. And I do really miss real time from games, but at the end of the day, I just prefer working in film, and ultimately it's always been my goal to go into film and cinematics. So that's sort of why I moved over.
I've got a few things to say about what you commented before. Like when you heard and when you mentioned that you say that it's difficult to go into film, and I believe so. I believe it's difficult. I don't really acknowledge how difficult it is, like what gets the foot into the door. But I do know one thing. One of the difficulties is to actually become good enough to be an artist that is eligible for getting into the industry. And the skills that you have, it's already something that is impressive. Like you can see the new character you're doing and you're still doing. It's been advertised on the internet medium, on the like in some popular mediums that all the artists would like to be. Like I don't know. You could mention some, right? But because you're a technical artist, like you said, you're very technical. You have a lot of skills in other softwares. Like we were discussing for this project specifically, like we do the Goblin Rex. Graphic design, video editing, about audio, about so many things. Because all these years, and even though you're very young, you're 23, you've been dedicating yourself to all these technical aspects that it gives us to deduce that you will keep on this path and will become greater and greater and greater. And I think it's a great opportunity for the companies now to actually hire you and get all this explosion of skills and talent that you have to always improve.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I recently got featured at Texturing XYZ and the Russian 3D scanners. They're the guys that do the rap software. And I was really fortunate because it's very difficult to get on there. And I think any artist, especially doing VFX and realism, would aspire to get on there. So it's a big honor for me to even be considered to be on there. So it's definitely awesome. But yeah, it's been a long journey and still much more to go. And yeah.
Um, as an artist, what do you think it characterizes you as an artist? Like, what are the features that you have, and you're like passionate, and you think you'll be different from anyone else? What makes you different?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I don't know what makes me different, because obviously there's millions of people out there and thousands of artists, and you're bound to overlap. But I think for me, what I believe is, because I'm a technical artist, right? I look at the technical things. I love art too, but I like to approach everything from a thought out perspective. I like to understand everything, and I think being able to problem solve quickly, and I also really enjoy it. I enjoy learning new software, learning new techniques. That's sort of why I know so many different things, like you mentioned before. Is I just enjoy learning, and I also enjoy teaching and helping out. And the more I know, I think the more I can help myself, and I can help other people. And I'm fascinated with realism. It's a really big thing for me, and I think taking that technical ability and just from not having anything in the beginning of my journey, and having to learn everything myself, I think in that sense I could say I'm a bit more unique than others that were more fortunate than me, and that's definitely impacted the way I see art and the way I do art. And I think that's what makes me an artist, is because I had to teach myself how to look at the world and how to look at art and look at the details. I have that personal journey that I think some other people might not have, and unless they went through similar struggles as I did in the beginning.
Yeah, you can see we can see the power coming. I don't know from where, but it's definitely there. And I'm glad that I met you, and you're been an extremely good resource for us as a group, as a Goblin Rex. And if it wasn't for you, the last video that we did wouldn't be as good. So I'm really happy to have you here with us. And
thank you, man. Likewise.
Oh, thank you. So this is the hard question that you said to me previously, that this kind of questions doesn't make you comfortable, but we are here to make you a bit uncomfortable as well, to get you out of the box, to make you sweat.
Man.
Because the difficulties in Namibia is not enough for you. You have to go even beyond that. So
yeah, hard mode. Let's go.
Yeah. What motivates you to do a specific personal project? What are you trying to achieve with each new project?
Yeah, so motivation is the big thing, It's very difficult to stay motivated, especially when you're in a situation similar to me with the internet and with everything that kind of brings you down. It's also really, really easy to fall into depression. I think just as an artist as well, we're very susceptible to things like this. But ultimately you kind of have to get off your ass eventually, and you have to strive to get better, because at the end of the day you're the only one that's going to do the work for you. No one's going to help you do the work.
That's not true. I'm here to help you.
Yes, you are. But yeah, but I mean, like on a physically, per sculpt basis. Unless you have good friends like these guys over here that are willing to take your sculpt off your hands and do all the work for you. But other than that, you're gonna have to do it yourself. So eventually, you just have to think. If I just maybe switch on the computer, just start sculpting a couple brushstrokes here, a couple brushstrokes there. Just get started. Eventually, you'll keep going and keep going. And I think that's the biggest thing, to get motivation, is sort of to force yourself. But also another way you could just keep, stay motivated is to try different things, experiment. If you're struggling with one project, put it on pause for a day and start another one, or maybe even try something different, something that you really enjoy, or maybe do something that you're already good at, and that'll sort of spark that flame that you have, that reason why you got into 3D in the first place. And I think that's a good way, at least in my opinion, to stay motivated. As for what I look for, to improve in my art is, just to improve. I have this goal ever since I saw this cinematics, Blizzard and Blur and all of these awesome studios and their amazing work, just striving for that quality. So I think that's sort of what I strive for in each project, is just to get that realism, get that quality. Yeah.
But that's what motivates you to always improve the quality of your work. You don't have like a specific, for example, like, whoa, I like this Pirates very much, or I like this, I really like this new game or this new movie or whatever, and I will try to replicate that. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, whatever you're watching at the moment, you might get inspired. Like I was with my latest character was pirate themed, and I've always loved pirates. I loved the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and pirate themed games, Assassin's Creed with the latest ones with the pirates in. And I was watching Black Shales, an amazing show, which also happens to be filmed in my country, which is super cool. I really got into that too, and that's also really inspired my work, as well as it sort of just worked out with the course that I was doing. The instructor was doing a similar character, so it just worked out perfectly. But yeah, whatever you're doing at the time, if you're watching something, you might get an idea, and I think that's also what makes us artists, is to be inspired by the world around us and the media that we see, and just make something out of it. And I think that's sort of what, essentially that's sort of what motivates my projects, and each project is like that. If I want to do a new project, I just think on something I've seen recently, that I really liked, and base it off of that. Or it doesn't even need to be exactly the same. For instance, it's not on my portfolio anymore, but I've done a few like reimaginings where I take a character, like for instance I took Voss, the main antagonist from Far Cry 3, and I made a female version. That was my first character, a full game character in the same course that Pedro did. And I did that adaptation. I did another character, which was essentially the Mad Hatter, Johnny Depp, from Alice in Wonderland, but set in the future. It's sometimes fun just to play around and explore and come up with new things and base them off of other ideas. So yeah.
So just for us to know, you mentioned the World of Warcraft, right? Cinematics, like that video that you watched and inspired you. In the future, is that like something that you want to aspire? What is your main goal? Like the main goal as an artist? What is the main, like a big project similar to, that you want to do similar to in your future? Like,
well, I really want to work at these companies for sure. I really love Star Wars, and I grew up with it, and I still continue to watch it and love it. So I would really love to work on a Star Wars project, be it a game cinematic or even the films, or even a game. That would be, I think, like a fantasy end goal, maybe one day. But ultimately, I think I really want to work at Blur. That's sort of been my goal since I started doing characters. Ever since I saw their their Star Wars cinematics, and from there, their Elder Scrolls and all of their amazing work, and just being able to work on big projects like that. And I mean, at this stage, not just Blur, any major cinematic studio like Axis or Playtech or whatever, it would just be amazing to be able to work on these extremely beautiful game cinematics, like what got me into it, So I guess ultimately that is the end goal for now, at least just get in to a studio like that and work on cool projects.
Do you want to actually mention, because I forgot to ask you before, what are the difficulties you feel as living in Namibia to actually start on the industry? Is there something that you would like to tell us about it?
Yeah, so there, like I mentioned before, there are a lot of struggles, and like the main thing is, I live in a third world country, so that means our currency is really weak and extremely weak. I think at the moment it's like 15 of my currency for $1, which is insane. So that makes things extremely expensive, be it software, be it programs, computer hardware, but also ultimately relocation. I think that's the biggest thing. And moving to a first world country, especially a big one like United States or United Kingdom, with that exchange rate difference, it can be very challenging and expensive to move. But I mean, at this stage, I'm ready. I will relocate. I'll try my best, but it can definitely be a hurdle and something to draw you back. But not even to move. I mean, just to stay, being able to afford a place to stay for the first few months while working at a studio, or transport, food, things like that. It can be daunting, definitely. So I would say those are, for any artist living, I think, in a third world country, it's a big hurdle, and definitely something that pushes you back. And I think that's why myself and many other artists strive for perfection, essentially, in their work, and always try to push the boundaries to be able to be good enough so that a company would offer relocation assistance and make it a bit easier for us to relocate. So yeah, I would say that's like the biggest drawback from living in a country like Namibia or South Africa or any third world country, really.
I strongly believe in you as an artist and in your skills. I believe that you just need an opportunity, and I think once you start, things will go naturally, and once you start, you won't feel these difficulties anymore. And I just want you to have good luck on that.
Thank you, man.
So moving on to the next question about social media. What is your relationship with social media? How do you expose your art and stuff like that?
Yeah, so in regards to social media, I personally don't really like it. I'm not really that social when it comes to online. I prefer real world interaction. But that being said, social media is a tool for an artist. It's your biggest tool in marketing, and I've sort of put it off for a very long time because I've always been uncomfortable with it. But recently, I've seen the need for it, and I have started to market myself. I still have a long way to go, for sure, in promoting myself, and I'm only now really starting to see the fruits of it. Just putting a little bit of more effort into it to make a post on Instagram or on Facebook for people to see. But yeah, it's definitely a tool to expose yourself, to get that exposure and exposition. Because otherwise, how are people going to see you or notice you if they've never seen your work before? So I would say, post everywhere. If you're on Facebook, which should be recommended, join all the 3D groups. You can find all the big ones like 10,000 Hours, Substance, Painter Group, or actually Substance Tools Group, I think is the group's name. Pixelogic ZBrush Group, Texturing XYZ. Just as many as you can find. If you use a particular software for 3D, chances are there's a really big community around it. Join that and post as much as you can. Even if you just made a sketch in ZBrush, post it. If you did some texturing in Substance, post it. Get some feedback, which is also another great thing about social media, is you can get feedback from people, and you meet friends. You meet people. I think if it wasn't for social media, I wouldn't have known a single artist. Even in my own country, I made all of my 3D friends from here on Facebook. So yeah, it can be a great tool. You just need to put in the effort, So yeah, and then that's also how companies can see you, and you gain contacts that you can use to get into the industry too. So yeah, it can be a great thing.
I agree, and that's how we met. Besides the fact that we had on this group, but we would interact as well on Facebook, and it's a great vehicle for making friends and interactions. Regarding you as an artist and your goals now, how do you see yourself in 5 and 10 years time?
So yeah, I guess it depends where life takes me, but I would like to see myself in 5 years working in the industry at least, and hopefully get into a good studio, hopefully doing cinematics. But 10 years, let's say 10 years, hopefully I worked on a couple cool projects, maybe dabbled a little bit in the film world as well, worked on some movies. That'd be super cool. But yeah, I guess to be in a better place than I am now would be ideally the goal, having a decent, financial circumstance, So yeah, I guess that's sort of where I see myself in a couple of years.
I think you come back to Namibia and being the king of Namibia with the with the exchange rates, like all the monies you bring.
Yeah,
you can do that. I think so. So, what do you think of the future of our industry, like being for games or for film or cinematics?
Yeah, I think the future is really bright. There's a lot of technology, that's constantly evolving, and I think most of the industry is also built on the technology that keeps evolving. And if we look at what we have now in terms of like VFX and games, they're very close, and they're getting closer, and especially with that next gen hardware, PlayStation 5 and the new Xbox and computer hardware, things are really looking up. And I think that within a few years, and it might be closer than we actually think, that the games and film industry will eventually start to merge, at least on like a technical level, being able to render in film stuff in real time as opposed to waiting hours, days, weeks for things to render. That would be amazing, and I think it's going to happen soon. As for games, looking at the Unreal Engine 5 that's coming out this year, just the sheer amount of power it has, and the no poly limits and the lighting and everything, it's near film. So yeah, I think maybe 10 years games will look just as good as movies, and movies will be able to run on game engines essentially, and it's already starting. Like if you look at Unreal Engine and how many films are using that in their production, it's insane. So yeah, the future is looking bright.
I have a final question from this list, and it's been a pleasure talking to you regarding the list that we already arranged for the questions.
Thanks,
my
man.
own questions.
Likewise.
Yeah, thank you. So, have you got a message for new artists that want to start in the industry? They want like any special message you want to deliver to them?
Yeah, I would say from what I've learned through the years is take it slow, you know, don't rush. Because, when I started out, I was very eager to try everything, be a generalist. And even when I started specializing in characters, it's daunting to make something that looks good because it's very technical, but you also want to make a full character. And I see this a lot now as well in newer character artists, and I normally tell this to them is if you find yourself struggling and it's really affecting you, maybe take a step back and do a bust. You don't have to do a full character, focus on smaller projects, maybe focus on things that you're a little bit more comfortable with. But definitely, you should always push your comfort boundaries, always try to improve as an artist. But don't overwork yourself. You have a lot of time. It doesn't come instantly. And I think that's another big thing is that a lot of people say or used to say quite a bit, and a lot of people believe and still think this, is that you do one course or you go to university, you get a degree and you just walk into a job. It doesn't really work like that, because this industry relies on a lot of hard work. If you want to be a good artist, you got to put in the work, and that takes time. If you want to do characters, you got to learn anatomy, you got to learn a lot of different things, and ultimately you have to practice, and it takes time. So don't expect to be good right off the bat. It takes years to get good, essentially. So don't overwork yourself, and never give up just because it's hard, which, believe me, it is. Doesn't mean you won't eventually get there, because I've been where you are, and many artists have been where you are. The greatest artists in the world have been where you are. Just keep going. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you very much. Before we finish, I got 2 sets of questions.
Mm-hmm.
The first set, I will read the questions to you. Is by our friend Marcel Abadia. He couldn't be with us today, but we have this list of questions, short questions that I would like to ask you. And
All right.
After that, another friend of ours, our dear friend and very talented artist as well, Traian, Constantine, also known as Frisky Boy. He will ask you some questions. So from now,
awesome.
the questions from Marcel, and the first one is, how do you reset your mind when you lack of motivation? How do you reset your mind to get back on track?
Yeah, another difficult question. So, I think a good way to reset your mind is to take a break. Try to relax. If you're gonna be working on a project for a long amount of time, which you definitely will, you'll run into roadblocks. You'll lose motivation. And if you're just gonna sit and do 3D for weeks on end, you need a break. Take a break, a day to a week if you want, a month if you want. But you gotta get back into it though. Don't get lost, and just do things that you like. If you like playing games, play games. If you like exercising, do that. Just refresh your mind. And even in general, if you're working on a project, it's good to take breaks. Because if you stare at the same thing for hours and days and weeks, you'll lose perspective. And even if you just step away for 5 minutes and look outside, look at nature, and come back, you'll see your mistakes. So to reset your brain, just take a break and
or
do
sometimes
things that keep you happy. Yeah.
Or sometimes even new ideas, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Try out different things, and even in 3D as well. If you're making characters and sculpting the whole time, maybe try modeling. Maybe try doing some effects. Maybe learn a new software. I don't know if you're technical, you learn Houdini, because it's gonna be it's gonna come in handy and be useful. Or just do something else to reignite the spark that you had you start 3D in the first place. I guess that's my answer.
Second question from Marcel. Your favorite resources for anatomy, design, and story building?
So I'd say anatomy would be anatomy for sculptors, definitely. Scan store, 3 scan store. Their scans are amazing, and I do recommend picking them up to study, because having an anatomy reference as a model inside ZBrush when you're sculpting, just to reference, is amazing, because it's 3-dimensional. You can rotate around, you can zoom in, you could draw on it, you can really gauge the forms, and using that in combination with the books is good. And YouTube has a lot of really good tutorials nowadays from really great artists. Check them out. I think as for anatomy, it's those are the ones. As for design, experiment, I would say. There are resources out there, but I think I personally haven't really, I guess, used many of them. I sort of just experiment. Although in terms of design, I guess if you can learn the fundamentals, Flip Normals is a YouTube channel that has really great tutorials and just talks, I guess, like podcasts almost, just of how design principles work, and how to look at things from a different perspective, how to look at reference and analyze things. So I guess start there and just sort of just do it. The more you do something, the better you get eventually. As for storytelling, movies and TV shows, that's where I get it. Like watch things and kind of like envision in your head how a story would play out, and kind of take from that, and look at art, look at lots of art, look at different artists' work, concept art, and environment art, and get inspired. That's sort of what I do at least. So yeah.
And you already mentioned some shows that you said, like Black Sails, you said?
Yeah, definitely. Things you like. One thing I do, and I'm sure a lot of artists do as well, when I watch a movie or a show or play a game, I really love to look at the details. Like I want to see what the artists have made, and through that you can get inspired a lot. And since I've done characters, and I do a lot of clothes for characters as well, because obviously characters need clothes, I really love looking at the costumes in movies and shows, especially because series have many episodes, and Black Sails really stuck with me because the costumes are so freaking cool. And just look at things that make you happy and that inspire you, and try to look at a detail, like a fine detail level, and deconstruct it in your mind, kind of. That's at least that's how I do it.
The last question from Marcel, it relates from how we started this conversation with your drawing skills or lack of them, because some artists like myself, I started the path like drawing, and other artists did it as well, and there's a bit of debating if you should know 2D if you want to do 3D. What do you think is the importance of knowing 2D if you want to become a 3D artist?
So, in my experience, I can't say for the industry, but at least in my experience, I can't draw at all. I can draw stick figures, and they're not good. So you don't need to, if you love art, and I guess it's the same for sculpture as well. If you want to sculpt faces with real clay, like traditional, you don't need to draw because you're doing it with your hands. You're sculpting 3-dimensionally. Same with art, like with 3D, you don't need it, But I can definitely imagine that it would help in a way, because it's two different mediums. It's 2D versus 3D, and I think this is what I've heard from people that can draw is when drawing, and especially if you get good at it, you have to think about perspective a lot. And I've heard that can influence your sculpting as well, and the way you think regarding perspective and forms and shapes in that way. But that's beyond me. I just sculpt, so you don't need it, in my opinion, to make cool stuff and be good at art or be good at 3D. But I assume if you do it, if it's something you enjoy, it could definitely benefit you in the long run, if that's your thing. But yeah, don't feel forced to do 2D if you don't want to, or if you can't. Just do 3D. Yeah.
Okay, I think
unless you want to be a concept artist, then I think you should draw.
I think we got the definite answer. It was yes, but no, but yes, but
yes,
no,
but no,
yes,
but yes,
but no.
Also no.
Yeah. All right.
It's a difficult question.
All right, I understood. That was all from my questions. I will introduce you now our friend Traian Constantine, aka Frisky Boitan, and he can introduce himself better if he wants. If he doesn't want,
Yeah, thank you, Colaço. Hi, Josh.
Hey, Frisky.
My question for you is how important is to have contact in this industry, and if you think it's better to know people than having amazing skills to get a job?
Yeah, so I think it is a 50-50, because you need to be good, or at least you need to be decent. You need to know how to make things. But also, you just increase your chances of getting into the industry if you know people, right? I've heard this a lot from artists that work in the industry, and people that are high up and have been working in the industry for years, is that if you can bypass recruitment and just get in, that's sort of the best way to get in. And by doing, to do that, you need to know someone on the inside. If you know a senior artist, or a supervisor, or even the director, he or she could vouch for you, and you could get in that way. Also, network, meet people, show your art, build your social presence. I've heard that if you can go to events like ZBrush Summit, or Trojan Horse was a unicorn, or Promise Land, I think it's called, and just events like that, you meet people in real life and show them your portfolio, and make contacts. Even if you do a course online, you could essentially, if you like the instructor, you could message him and make a contact out of him. And maybe one day you could message him and show him your work and ask if he has any advice or any work for you. And I think that comes into play, quite a bit. But yeah, at the end of the day, you also need to have a good portfolio. So yeah, I would say it goes 50-50% together.
Okay, thank you. The
Cool.
next question is how many hours you are involved in improving your skills, or how many hours per day you are involved in this?
So this is a very difficult question for me to answer, because I get lost quite a lot. So I don't have a routine. I sort of just go with it. So I don't do every day, but I do try to do as much as possible. Especially if I'm doing a project, or if I do a course, if I to do something for a client, then I'll work on it every day. As for hours, I would say if I'm really into it, like if I'm in the zone, I could go the whole day. I think minimum 8 hours for me personally, if I'm really working on something, and then maximum would be like 15 to 18 hours. But yeah, I would say on average, if I really have to think about it, would be 8 to 12. Yeah. unless I get distracted. Then but I when I work on something, it's never less than 4 or 5 hours.
Okay, nice. The next one. It is better to know less from everything than master only thing. I'm asking you this because I see that you know a lot of things, but I don't know exactly if you know everything at master level or like only just a little bit to have an idea of how it's working. What do you think? It's better to know less from everything than master only one thing?
So this is an interesting question. So the way I think about it, and the way that I've heard a lot of people say, is a bit of both, actually. Because if you're a generalist, meaning you do everything, right? You'll never be able to master everything. It's impossible, because every field is extremely challenging. There's so much you have to learn. So it's just impossible to be a master at everything unless you're a god. Which there are quite a few like legendary artists like that. But if you're just going to be focusing on everything the whole time, you're going to be mediocre at everything. And if you just specialize and just focus on one thing and become a master, yes, you're a master, which is great, which is better than being mediocre, but you're limited to just that one thing. And in production, or in your career, you might have to do other things as well. So a bit of both is good. Try to learn. What I would say is try to learn as much as possible if you want to, obviously, but also have one main thing that you do. Like for me, I love characters and I specialize in characters, and I put all my effort into that. But I do like experimenting quite a lot. So, and especially early on when I started, I was a generalist and I learned programming, I learned graphic design, sound mixing, a little bit of animation, not that much, and just a bunch of like different things. So, I have those skills to aid me when I work on characters, and being in a production that could assist as well. It can definitely make you more of an asset to the company that's hiring you, because maybe you know how the pipeline works. If you know how the game engine works, it could influence how you make the asset. If you know how rigging works and animation works, you could be a benefit. It'll just make your life easier in the long run, I think. And I've heard this as well from many people working in the industry, is just focus on one thing, but also try to learn more things, because at the end of the day, it's just going to help you. So a bit of both. Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Mr. Josh Wallace. It was a great pleasure to have you here with us and knowing about your background. And we are all rooting for your success and this amazing career that you want to have in the cinematics and film industry, involved with these big projects. We all believe that you can do it. So thank you for being with us and have this privilege of interviewing you.
Thank you so much, man. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, everyone, clap your hands. Hey! And thank you for being here with us. Please, we will post another interview soon, and until then, stay safe and have a good life.
Hey, like and subscribe.